So today's guest is the founder and CEO of Enlighten Leadership. And for over 2 decades, she has provided strategic advice across industries, supporting leaders in the private, public, and government sectors in Asia, Europe, UK, and the US. She is an experienced consultant who fosters inclusive communities by enhancing accessibility and promoting equitable professional opportunities for members of the underrepresented demographics. In addition, she assists organizations with crisis management. She serves on advisory boards. She helps to craft institutional strategic objectives. And she was the inaugural Global Executive Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the INSEAD Business School. And she also twice served as part of the senior leadership team at Yale Law School, everybody, as an associate dean and special advisor to the dean. She holds a Juris Doctor from Yale Law School and a BA in History and Politics from New York University. Currently, she's based in London and in Spain. Most importantly, she's a wonderful human being, someone who has humility, compassion, and she embraces life with open arms. Everyone, I present to you Sharon Brooks. Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your kind words. It means so much coming from you. You are absolutely one of the most generous and wonderful colleagues I've had the privilege of working with. So it is such a delight to be here with you.
I am happy and I'm double delighted because I know we've been wanting to do this for a while. So I'm very happy that we finally are here. So Sharon, anything else you want to add in that bio that I might have missed out that you want to introduce yourself or anything more personal that you may want to add and share?
I no, thank you so much. That was a wonderful introduction. I would say, in addition to my professional journey, which has taken me around the world, in terms of my personal journey, I was born in Jamaica in the West Indies before emigrating to the US, and then it picks up right where you said. So just wanted to add that to round out the geographic picture.
Perfect, perfect. And I'm sure we'll uncover a lot more as we go along. So Sharon, I think I want to start there. I think there's something that I might have mentioned to you, I think one of the last few times that we spoke, but I want to let our listeners and viewers, if they're watching, know, is that DEI, when I first heard about it, it was a terminology. My understanding of it started and ended with those words. But I think you were the first person I met who opened my mind more to this, in our conversations, whether they were outside the classroom or within those amphis for all those sessions. And, it really got me to pause and think it's more than just, those words of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I think maybe we'll start there. For those that do not know, Sharon, what is DEI and what is it not?
Thank you for that. It is so important to start with common understanding of what we mean. And often I think what people perceive as disagreements or misalignment around this concept really comes from not first establishing what we mean. So I really appreciate that. The best way to describe very complex concepts, I think, is just to um, make an analogy. So I would say, think about hosting an event,
Mm,
and diversity would be who's invited, who is in the room. And it, the room is often, especially in Singapore, where you and I met and worked, is made up of people of many different cultural backgrounds, many different perspectives, many different ethnicities. There's often gender diversity. And so you think about the mix of people who make up an environment or an institution. Equity would be the opportunities and resources that are provided to ensure that everyone who is there has an opportunity to thrive and succeed.
mm,
And then inclusion is, think about the environment that you work to create and wanting to make sure that people feel welcome. And it's very closely linked to the idea of belonging. So that's a quick way to describe the concepts of DEI.
That's, I think you hit the nail on the head there because I think a lot of times, I mean, I won't go into more things like tokenism and all right now because I think that you would be able to do like a 24-hour podcast, I think, based on that topic. But I think the two words that I wrote down here are thrive and succeed because I think a lot of times people think, oh, they're there, they're at the party, but are they getting the same opportunities and thriving? I think can you talk a little more about what that would look like if somebody is allowed to thrive?
Yeah, absolutely. When you think about a work environment, people bring their personal histories to work, they bring their professional histories to work, and there are some individuals who will have been fortunate enough to have received really amazing support and resources before they arrive at the workplace. So, great, high quality educational opportunities. Maybe they've grown up in an environment where they were fortunate to have mentors, family members perhaps, who understood the industry that they're now working in. And so have had an opportunity to learn about the industry, the vocabulary, the all of the things that help someone to succeed. And there might be others who are very new to the environment, very new to the sector, and are learning, but because of some factors that are within their control, and maybe some factors, some systemic factors that are outside of their control, haven't had access to the same type of educational resources, haven't had access to the same mix of mentors and people who are able to educate them about the space in which they are in. And so when you think about setting the stage for people to thrive, one of the things that's helpful is to think for those who are less experienced and have had less exposure, what sort of information, what sort of resources, what sort of mentorship will set them up to succeed in a similar way that people who have had access to all of these resources and opportunities before they walked in the door. And when you set everyone up to be able to work to their fullest abilities, to be able to achieve the things that they want, then everyone benefits. The individuals, their colleagues, their clients, and ultimately the organizations as well.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of trying as best as possible to get everybody to the same starting line so that they run the race together to the best of their abilities. Would you say that's the
Absolutely right.
idea? Yeah. Yeah.
I
Okay.
absolutely agree with that. Yes.
Okay. So Sharon, I think we'll get a little bit into your personal journey here because I'm sure it started somewhere. So I think maybe what brought you on this journey of DEI? What compelled you to decide that, okay, this is what I want to do? Because you are legally trained. And I think maybe we'll talk a little bit about the relationship between DEI and legal and what that looks like. But maybe a little more on what compelled you or encouraged you to take this path.
I would say that I was inspired to start down a professional and personal path of supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion um, because of the amazing mentors and opportunities that I was lucky enough to have in my own life. And maybe I can give some concrete examples, and,
Sure.
and
Yeah, that'd
that'll
be
help
good. Now's your time.
explain
Shout out
what
to them.
inspired me. Absolutely. So when I went to college at New York University, I knew that I very much wanted to become a lawyer. I had been inspired to pursue a career where I would be fighting for justice, where I'd be able to help others to access justice as well. And in the United States, where I grew up, there was a rich history and tradition of lawyers carving that professional path. But I wasn't aware of any lawyers in my family. As far as I know, I am the first lawyer in my
Wow.
family,
Wow. Okay.
and really sought to find mentors who would help me to understand what it meant to be a lawyer, what the world of legal training and practice meant. And so I had a chance as an undergraduate, as actually a first year undergraduate student at NYU, to take a course with the then dean of NYU Law School.
That is amazing.
Um, and he became a mentor. I very naively walked into his office hours one day and said, "I'd like you to be my mentor." I think he was so enchanted and amused by my confidence and naivete about how many people wanted his time that he absolutely agreed. And he was a really wonderful and generous person, John Sexton, who then went on later on to become the president of New York University. Um, and he and I were on the surface not very alike. I was a Jamaican immigrant woman, and he was Anglo-Saxon man who had gone to Harvard and had this Ivy League background, and I had none of that, but he really saw as part of his work in life to help the next generation succeed. And I was very, very fortunate to benefit from that. Um, I then went on to attend law school at Yale University. And throughout my time at Yale, had wonderful mentors inside and outside of the classroom who helped me along the way. And because when I was an undergraduate, John, my mentor, had said to me, if you really want to succeed as a lawyer, start learning the language of the law as soon as you can. Work
Mm.
for NYU Law School. And so the entire time that I was an undergraduate, I worked for first the law school library and then the Office of Career Services. So when I was a student at Yale Law and I encountered other first generation lawyers who didn't quite understand the language of the law, who didn't appreciate all of the different things we could do as lawyers. I thought back to my days working in the career services office and helping first year law students to understand the basics. And I did that. I worked with some of my classmates to explain in a very accessible and simple way what the world of the law was. And we also had a wonderful career services office there, but I think it helped to bring the perspective of someone who didn't understand the world of the law before working for a career services office and could explain it in that way. I was so inspired by the difference that I saw that could make that after practicing law, and I was so lucky to practice at some of the leading law firms in the United States. After practicing law, I had the opportunity to return to that very office, to NYU Law's Career Services, where I worked as an undergraduate, and serve as part of the leadership of the career services team and help the next generation of lawyers to find their way and find their passion for the law. And what brought me to the work of DEI was realizing that a number of the students who needed um, some additional information and resources and mentorship, like me,
Mm.
came from less represented demographics.
Right.
So women, people who were ethnically underrepresented in the field of the law, people who had emigrated to the United States where I went to school and where I practiced. And because of who I am, I think people from those underrepresented backgrounds sought me out and came to me. while I was practicing and while I was working in career services, the field of diversity and inclusion really began to grow up and take shape. And I was in the right place at the right time and have incorporated that into my career as a practicing lawyer with uh, students that I help to mentor and recruit, as an academic administrator, and eventually as part of the leadership teams in higher education at academic institutions.
That's amazing. It sounds like, the path was paved for you rather than you sat and you actively like planned it through. It seemed like you pretty much followed your heart, as cliched as that sounds, but it's true. And then it took you and think, they say when you take the first step, the path will appear. So it seems like that was the case for you.
Oh, that is so true. Absolutely right. And it came from asking myself, where can I be the most helpful?
Mm.
How can I really help others to find success and to find their passion? And that's where the path took me. You're absolutely right. It appeared before me once I really thought about how I could serve in that way.
Where can I be the most helpful? I think this is a question that someone only with a certain amount of empathy and wanting to do good in the world will ask, because I think I mean, we all can think of a lot of people who would say, where can others be the most helpful to me? So I think it also takes a certain type of a person to want to, take this journey. Um, and yeah, kudos to mentorship, because I think I realized quite late, um, in well, growing up, but I think in my career, that like I've had some mentors along the way and some coaches. I don't want to name them here, but they know who they are, and it really elevates you in a way that you never thought possible. I think it they don't realize, I think, as mentors for people who are underrepresented or not from a majority group, that it can really change not just your path, but I think the way you see yourself. So is there anything or any incident in particular, or any example in particular that stands out to you, whether it's something you experienced or whether it's something you were a part of, where you felt, I'm glad I'm doing this, and this is working, like in a world that is tough and sometimes seems to be getting tougher, that you were happy that you made that choice.
Oh, there are a number of examples, but there's one that keeps coming back to me
Mm,
uh, throughout my life, and that's the one that I'd love to share with you
sure.
now. Um, it was during my first year as a dean of students. There were so many people who came into my office and said, I am the mistake that this institution made. I am sitting in this classroom surrounded by brilliant people. I don't know how I got into this place, but I really don't feel like I belong. And I remember saying those exact same words to my dean of students and to the teaching assistants who worked with me as a first year student. And there was one young woman in particular who had expressed those feelings, and her faculty members had told me what promise she had and, you
Wow.
know, the difference that they thought she was going to make, but she really didn't see it in herself. And so, first, I let her express the feelings that she had, let her know that they were absolutely valid, that given the place and the level of pressure that existed within the hallways, that I understood why she felt that way, but I promised her she did belong. And I
Mm,
said to her, for every day that I am here in this institution, I want to be able to tell one of you, a student, that you really do belong. And I did almost every day of those 5 years that I served as a dean of students. And when I went back, to that institution later on as an advisor to the dean, I did have many opportunities to reassure people that they had earned their place, that they absolutely did belong, and that as long as they could have the confidence in themselves that others had in them, that is all they needed to succeed.
It's brilliant because we speak about imposter syndrome, or we hear about it, or and it's so many people go through it, or they think it. Some vocalize it, some don't, some live with it for the entirety of their lives, just waiting to be found out, that someone's going to wake up one day and realize that, oh, I'm actually not as good as everybody thinks I am. And somebody told me this once, because when you were vocalizing those words, I remember being like thinking, I don't belong in this XYZ place. And someone told me this. I can't remember who it was, but they said, okay, so let's just accept the fact that you're not that good. All right, let's say if that's what you believe, accept that. And all these other people around you who you think are super smart and amazing and all of that, if you really think that you're not that intelligent, or not, whatever, whatever description we want to use, do you think you're so smart that you can outsmart the people, to trick them into believing that you're something you're not? And that kind of, it was a bit of a mental judo there, I think, but it really got me to think that yes, if people see something in you, even if you don't see it for yourself, sometimes that's all it takes for you to take that leap of faith. you know um, and I think what you've managed to do for so many students who are probably passing it on right now, especially this young lady who's full of talent, is going back to exactly what you said when we started, was you gave her the permission to belong, and then eventually in her own mind to permission to thrive. So I'm sure she appreciates that a lot. Yeah, yeah. All right. So moving along, in a world that's divided about, DEI, of course, I think there will be a lot of people who say, yes, everyone should thrive. Yes, everybody should belong. But when we hear those terms, DEI, why do you continue to talk about it, or to push for it, or advocate, for it in your gentle, intelligent, knowledgeable, compassionate way, in a world that is so divided about it?
I think it's because I have faith that if people really understand what each other mean by inclusion, by diversity, that we will realize that we are much closer in our thinking about it than it might seem. So I do think some of the misunderstanding around the term and some of the backlash that that has generated comes from a sense that DEI means that some people are going to get an unfair advantage.
Right.
And so I think first coming from the perspective of you want everyone to thrive. Someone's some people are going to need different things in order to thrive, but just figuring out what that is, and that you want everyone within a space to be able to thrive, not just some people, not just the people who started off in a position of less advantage. You want to make sure you're creating an environment where everyone is going to perform at their best. Once you start from those set of that set of understanding about what the term means, often then you meet with less resistance about it.
Mm.
And then when you need to define, well, what do people need in order to thrive? And when people need different things, what is the responsibility of a particular organization or leadership in order to provide those resources? That's where you need to work on policies. That's where you need to take a look at different regulatory schemes and laws within the city, the country, the jurisdiction in which you're operating, to help to define what that is and determine what is fair. But I
Right.
think just being very open and honest about what you hope to achieve, and that it is ultimately a world where everyone is performing at their best. I think it is so important to help to foster that conversation and to make sure everyone has that shared understanding of what the goal is.
Yeah, I think that would change a lot of people's minds because I think it's exactly what you said, unfair advantage. I think people would are at a point where they need that knowledge, and I think having the right people to talk about DEI is so vital because if you have the wrong person with the wrong idea about it, spreading it and to the masses, it does more damage than. Before I let you go, one last question. Actually, it's a two-part question. One is, what is your one piece of life wisdom that you've received that you always remember? And the second part to that is one piece of wisdom that you want to give and pass down.
Yeah. Thank you for that question, because it really forces you to reflect on all of the good advice that you've gotten
Too
as
much
you move through
sometimes.
life, and really focus on some of the ones that have impacted you the most. Um, I would say the piece of advice that I got early on when I started working as a practicing lawyer is the one that has served me the best throughout all of my different careers and professional moves. And that is always stand up for your team.
Mm.
Always have your team members' backs. When you are a leader, always make sure that your team members know that you will take responsibility for the mistakes that happen and you will share credit for the successes that happen. And that's important not just because technically the buck stops with you, but because of what we were talking about before in terms of making people feel comfortable, making people feel welcome and confident. If someone feels the security of knowing that their boss or their supervisor or the leader of their team has their back, that then gives them a comfort and a freedom to be able to take chances, to be creative, to really push themselves and not just stay in a comfort zone because they know that they're not going to be hung out to dry if something goes wrong, right?
Right.
And I think taking the approach that if someone makes a mistake, ultimately as the leader, that reflects on perhaps time that you could invest a little bit more to give them the experience and the knowledge that they need. So ultimately, that is your responsibility.
Mm.
And the only regrets that I have had as a supervisor or a manager are the times when I inadvertently neglected to do that, when I didn't realize it was necessary. And the proudest moments I've had is when I have stood up for my team. Um, so that's the best piece of advice that I have received and hopefully continue to put into practice. And I guess the bit of wisdom that I would want to give is be proud of who you are and be willing to show your whole self at work, outside of work. And it is about authenticity, which is a trendy word,
Yeah.
I think these days, but it speaks to something that is fundamentally true. When you are not spending a lot of energy to pretending to be someone other than who you are, um, that is when you're going to really come into your fullest self and be at your best. Um, and there we've talked about many aspects of diversity through this conversation. I'm an immigrant. I'm a woman. Often that's a gender that's underrepresented in leadership ranks.
Yep.
Um, in many of the places that I've lived, whether in the US or in Asia, in Europe, in the UK, I'm a member of underrepresented ethnic um, uh, demographics and communities, but I'm also married to a woman, and that's not something that many people would know. From looking at me, they see many other aspects of diversity, but it is something that um, I I don't introduce into conversations where it doesn't make sense, but it is
Right.
also something that I don't run from and that I'm just as proud of as other aspects of my identity. And I hope that it then gives other people comfort and courage to bring um, all parts of themselves, even the ones that aren't visibly obvious to others. And I hope that that's wisdom and advice that will serve other people well throughout their lives and throughout their work environments too.
Absolutely, Sharon. Absolutely. I think it definitely will carry them through and through. And I think it's going to open their hearts in ways to themselves. Because I think in this conversation, as you've so rightly reminded us, about, of course, education, but belonging and thriving and putting everybody in a room where they feel comfortable, on an emotional level, on a physical, mental, um, dare I say it, even spiritual level about acceptance. And, I think what you've said of be proud of who you are, it's so powerful because I think we're more than happy and willing to be compassionate or sometimes kinder to other people. But sometimes we are so afraid to be proud of ourselves. So to have people like you in the world who tell us what it means to be a compassionate human being uh, gives us the permission, the validation, and the recognition to say to ourselves that it's okay for me to take this space. It's okay for me to sit at that table. It's okay for me to be here as I am. And I think that's very powerful today in a world that is just seems to be going in the opposite direction sometimes. So
And
thank you for that. Yeah,
oh, absolutely. And if I could just close by
sure.
saying one thing, part of what inspired me to do what I'm doing now through my company, Light and Leadership, is to shine a light. That's how I came up with the
Mm,
name of the company, to shine a light on those who may not have the or the courage to always speak up for themselves and working with companies and leaders and organizations to do that. And I want to come back to where we started this conversation, where you said that you weren't as aware of DEI, but I want to say that you were one of the people who I worked with, who just in what you did every day and who you were worked to help shine a light on people and work to help encourage and help people to succeed and be their best selves. And so even if the terms weren't as instinctive to you, you were an example of that. You did shine a light on that just in who you were and the wonderful colleague that you were. So I want to end with where I started, which is by thanking you for doing that as well.
thank you so much, Sharon. You've made my week. I was going to say initially you made your day when we started this conversation. Well, you've made my day, but I think now you've made my week. And I'm going to, have happy thoughts and try not to get emotional because my voice is cracking a little bit right now. But thank you for saying that. And yeah, like I said, I hope you continue to shine the light in the world personally and professionally in every which way. And I think for anyone in an organization, whether it's a big organization or they're just getting started, but if they're looking to advance DEI and belonging and want their team to thrive as best as possible, where can they come and find you?
I worked with colleagues of ours actually at Perfect Day to create a great website, and I give them all the credit. And so it's www.enlighten leadership.com. And you can also find me at Enlightened Leadership on Instagram and on LinkedIn as well.
Perfect. I will put all of that in the description for all the listeners and viewers as well, so they can click and come find you when they want to, know more or learn more or even just get started. Because I think just taking that first step is a big thing. It's just about getting started and trying to educate themselves. And, if you care about your team, you care about yourself, you care about having an emotionally safe workplace, I think this would be a big thing to tick off the list. Yeah. All right. On that note, thank you once again, Sharon, for shining a light, on the world, on this topic in every little way that you do, well, little and big ways that you do and have done, and for reminding us once again that to be proud of ourselves, to stand up for our teams and stand up for ourselves, and that there is still good and there is hope and there is faith in the world and there will continue to be. Thank you once again. And any final tips or words before we sign off?
Just thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation and a great one to have during International Women's Month. So thank you.
You're most welcome. And to everybody listening and watching, thank you for joining in and stay wise.